Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from deep inside the heart of the future Liberty State. Sponsored once again by On Fire Ministries, in the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news, where it's not about right or left, it's about right and wrong. It's about our hope not being in man, but in Jesus Christ. About not ending in prayer, but moving to action. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Father, deliver us from the evil one.
Welcome to Patriot Radio.
Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio. Today, how close are we to World War III? Some disturbing signs out of the Middle East and out of the United States, actually. Also, the Pope dies, and on the same day, Klaus Schwab resigns. But there's more to the story with the globalists, which means that something is up on the global level, and it tells me that the globalists are running in fear. And also, our guest today, Don Jolly. We're going to be talking about a very controversial topic, but it shouldn't be. And that is COVID a lab leak? Was it intentional? And what's the response here in the United States? So stay tuned here when we have Don Jolly coming in about half an hour. Here at Patriot Radio, we want you to have the information before everybody else so that you and your family can be prepared for the times that are ahead and the times that are already upon us. No fear, we were made for this. So follow us on Telegram for real-time intelligence analysis and breaking news, patriotradio.us/Telegram. And during this time, like I said, there should be no fear. So if you need prayer, please send in a prayer request, and our team stands ready to pray with you in your walk, patriotradio.us/prayer. Now, in the scripture today, I just want to highlight one passage from Proverbs, chapter 21, verse 31. Prepare your horse for battle, but the battle is the Lord's. Now, I've talked about this before, but I want to talk about it now, and I'm going to tell you why. I got some very disturbing intelligence late last night through a back channel. And there is something big in the offing in the next couple of weeks, it looks like. And could that be a strike on Israel by Iran, or could Israel be striking Iran first? The United States be striking Iran? The bottom line is that with the tenuous nature of the world as it is today, we should always be prepared. But I think sometimes we think so far out, and we keep focused so far out, that we aren't asking God, what should I be doing now? You've shown me this, Lord. Why have you shown me this? What do you want me to do now? And I think that's the prayer that we all need to be praying tonight, rest of this week. God, what do you want us to be doing right now? Because when we're doing what the Lord has called us to do, that is the best preparation. Regardless of what comes, apostasy and awakening always happen at the same time. My question to the church is, if war does break out, are we ready for our churches to be packed full? Are we ready for the great harvest? Are we ready to disciple that many people? Not just lead them to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ and baptize them, but are we ready to receive that many people as disciples? Those are the things we should be getting answers to right now. That's how we should be preparing. Because in the end, it is the church that should be leading culture, not the other way around. And that brings us now to your daily intelligence brief, and a lot here, and I'm going to go through some things that you're not going to hear anywhere else that I know of. But first, the globalist front.
The future is built by us. We have the means to make progress on the global agenda.
Well, it seems like Klaus Schwab has made so little progress that he resigned. But we're going to get to that here in a second. I mean, can we even keep him on there? I guess we have to, as a sign of defeat of the globalists, at least one anyway. And we don't want to take that for granted because there is globalist machinations still happening. And there's still a lot happening in Washington, D.C. behind the scenes right now as well. So the Pope has died. What happens next? What happens when the Pope dies? Bottom line is that this initiates a very structured and time-sensitive transition involving the College of Cardinals. Conclave is a globally monitored event with tight protocols. And when they come to a conclusion, smoke will come out of the Vatican and we will all know who the new Pope is. So a couple of things to talk about this. Typically, the timeline is 15 to 20 days for a conclave initiation. And it happens in Vatican City and specifically in the Sistine Chapel. So leading candidates for the papacy at this point are Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle from the Philippines, Cardinal Pietro Parolin from Italy, Cardinal Peter Turkson from Ghana, Cardinal Matteo Zuppi from Italy. Now, on the conservative side, many people are pressing Cardinal Sarah. I'm going to get to his comments here in just a second. But the fact of the matter is that, at least at this point, Pope Francis, who was the 112th Pope according to the prophecy of Malachi, was supposed to be the last Pope. And the last Pope was supposed to be someone named Peter Romanus. Now, many people have poo-pooed the prophecy. Either way, this is going to make for not just a historic event, but determining the direction of the Catholic Church worldwide. After the very liberal Pope Francis, very globalist Pope Francis, steered the Catholic Church away from not just its traditional and historic roots, but it's actually its Christian roots. So many people were asking, is the Pope Catholic? And that's the same question that's going to be asked right now with the new Pope. But here's the politics of this. In the College of Cardinals, Pope Francis appointed 109 of the 135 cardinal electors for the next Pope. So it's very likely a liberal Pope will be elected again, which is translated into a rise among traditional Catholics. And this is why many are saying, why do we not put in a conservative who actually believes in Christianity, like Cardinal Robert Sarah? Quote, if Christianity disappears in Europe, the whole world is threatened, end quote. A staunch advocate against illegal immigration happening, not just in Europe, but in the United States as well, but a staunch protector of Christian civilization. I want you to take a look at Cardinal Robert Sarah, and I want you to understand that the list that I just read off is not just diametrically opposed to his views, but no one has ever really thought a black pope could be elected. That's interesting. Why? Why are the liberals the ones that are keeping a cardinal like Robert Sarah out? I think that's a question that needs to be asked internal to the Catholic Church. And we're going to have Bill Jasper on later to discuss, and not this episode, but another episode to discuss this issue, because it's a very serious one and very serious for the direction of Western civilization. Which brings us to Klaus Schwab. Turns out that he resigned on the same day, and typically people do that to mask their own resignation as a news story. But there's more. Today, Klaus Schwab is under internal investigation following a whistleblower allegation of financial and ethical misconduct. Specifically, among the accusations that Klaus Schwab withdrew thousands in cash using junior staffers as gophers, charged private hotel massages to WEF accounts, allowed his wife to book luxurious vacations disguised as business travel, and utilized WEF property as a private retreat while presenting it as a conference center. Now, I'm not excusing what he did, but this is kind of typical in that arena. And here's the other interesting piece of this. that through Schwab's spokesman, he denied every allegation to the whistleblower complaint, and he's going to file lawsuits to find out probably who this whistleblower is. But the fact of the matter is, this smacks of Klaus Schwab being retaliated against or on the outs with the globalists themselves, which tells me that with internal turmoil among the globalists, they must be afraid of what is happening here in the United States with Donald Trump, and that the entire attempt at a global one world government, at least right now, is on the fritz. I would not say they are down and out. That brings us now to the China front. China plays South China Sea style salami slicing tricks in the Yellow Sea after aggressive posturing in the South China Sea. Some are now calling it the Philippine Sea, by the way. China is upping the ante in the Yellow Sea following this building of a gigantic steel rig. This has been a bone of contention between South Korea and China. The coast guards of the two countries recently had a standoff after Korean ships wanted to investigate the steel structure. Now, if you take a look at this map down there, you will see what China is trying to do. And China's biggest problem has been and always will be geography. You'll see that South Korea, Japan, Taiwan form a first ring around China. And farther than that, there's a second ring. So China never truly has had an access to an open ocean. And if you look down where it says South China Sea there on that map, there is a place called the Malacca Straits where most of its oil goes through. This is why they were trying to come over the Himalayan mountains to the port of Lahore in Pakistan, because they wanted a way around the Malacca Strait, because again, they are hemmed in with the sea. So what China is doing is building structures and islands off of its coast to expand its area and zone of influence. They're going to continue to do that and continue to press their claims in the South China Sea using what people call gray zone strategy, but it's really not. This is warfare. They're using their fishing fleets and their shipping fleets to spy, but also to claim parts of that same sea. So we're going to see this continue into the future. But China's new naval base is revealed on satellite images, along with worrying signs hinting at China's military plans for the region. This is just further confirmation that China is building up for an invasion of Taiwan. Invasion barges, subsea cable cutters, and surprise naval drills. China is testing Donald Trump. In this article, they're saying that China's kind of flexing. This isn't flexing. I believe China is preparing to invade Taiwan as early as the next 6 months. In other words, in the fall, October, September timeframe. And China is seeing and testing what the U.S. reaction would be. But they're set on doing this, and specifically Xi Jinping is set on doing this as his legacy. But also you have the fact that China's economy is not doing well right now. And the Chinese Communist Party will go to war before they lose power. Beijing has warned nations not to cut U.S. trade deals at China's expense. It's warned countries against striking deals with the U.S. that could hurt Beijing's interests. Quote, it resolutely opposes any party reaching a deal at the expense of China's interests. If that happens, Beijing, quote, will never accept and will resolutely take reciprocal countermeasures. China is willing to strengthen solidarity and coordination with all parties, but will resist unilateral bullying acts. So what China is afraid of are the studies that the Trump administration knows about, that any tariffs over 10% could potentially collapse the Chinese economy. But I want to explain this. What is Trump really doing with tariffs? It's very important for us to understand this. Number one, Trump is rebuilding the middle class in the United States of America. By having all of the manufacturing come back to the United States, jobs come back, good paying jobs, which will rebuild the middle class, which will increase freedom. But the second big thing that Trump is doing with tariffs doesn't really have anything to do with tariffs as much as it does this principle. And the principle is that wars are not won by tanks and airplanes. Wars are won by economies. And Trump is depriving China of the economic ability to wage a sustained war. Most people have missed this, but we have it here at Patriot Radio. And you need to understand that Trump, and what he is doing right now, may actually prevent a war instead of taking us into one. China has urged Japan on U.S. tariffs. Chinese Premier Li Kang has indeed sent a letter to the Japanese Prime Minister calling for a coordinated response to U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff measures. Japan, one of Washington's closest allies, has also been targeted by Trump's tariffs and is negotiating with the U.S. to resolve the issue. Yeah, they're going to resolve this issue. China is trying to use it as a wedge. It's not going to happen. The Japanese understand Chinese ambitions. And that's why Japan announced its new railgun today, ready to zap Chinese hypersonic missiles. Japan deployed a ship-based railgun, marking a breakthrough in electromagnetic weaponry and saturation missile defense. This is a huge deal. Normally, these things would be kept top secret until just before a war broke out, or even after a war has broken out. The fact that they're putting that out there right now tells me that this is a counter to China and trying, at least, to stave off China's ambition of invading Taiwan in the near future. Japan's ship-mounted railgun offers a cost-effective and rapid response to potential missile saturation threats by utilizing electromagnetic energy to launch projectiles at hypersonic velocities. Let me put this into plain English. They make projectiles out of very hard metal. They change polarity, changing the electromagnetic field, launching these projectiles at hypersonic speeds, so it really doesn't matter too much what they're made of as long as it's a hardened material, because as fast as this material, or as fast as projectile is going, it can pierce almost anything. And also, it's a lot cheaper than these fancy missiles. So they can continue to fire it over and over and over again, similar to a laser. That's why this is an important breakthrough. Also, overnight, unknown insurgents ambushed a group of tourists in the resort town of Palagam in Kashmir. So far, the death toll stands at 24 fatalities, an unknown number of wounded. As per Indian officials, PM Modi has stated that the incident was a terror attack. The timing of this attack was probably not random. Now, just interestingly, J.D. Vance was one of the last people to see the Pope alive at 11:30. That's not nefarious. He just was one of the last meetings the Pope had. But also, this attack took place during his visit to India. And it comes on the heels of an announcement that the U.S. and India have reached a trade deal. That is a huge thing for a couple of reasons. Number one, all of the things that China is making and sending to the United States can be easily shifted to India. Number two, India is a huge rival of China. And because of this new friendship, China now has to mount a threat on its southern border. When we come back from the break, more from the Middle East front and some very dramatic news about preparations in the United States for nuclear war.
Attention business owners and entrepreneurs, Patriot TV is launching a brand new TV series showcasing American-made products, and your business could be featured. Whether you sell your products online, on Etsy or Shopify, and dream of reaching millions of viewers on smart TVs like Samsung, Sony, TCL, and LG, or apps like Roku, Android, and Apple TV, this is your chance. We're searching for U.S.-based businesses offering all types of products and services proudly made in the USA. If you've ever wanted to showcase your products on TV like QVC or the Home Shopping Network, now's your opportunity. Support our American economy, grow your business, and be seen by loyal Patriot viewers across the country. Know someone with a business or have a business yourself? Don't miss out. Contact us at supportingpatriots.com today. Be a guest on this new exciting TV series. Let's put your American-made products in the spotlight.
The new Supporting Patriots show on Patriot TV spotlights great Patriot-owned companies and introduces them to Patriot consumers, encouraging them to buy American-made. If you're an America-loving patriot that owns and operates his or her own business, and you have Made in America products or services, you're the perfect candidate to be interviewed on the Supporting Patriots show. If you'd like to be considered for an interview, email us at supportingpatriots@patriot.tv.
And we're back with the Middle East front. The Trump administration has sanctioned Iranian shipping magnate offloading illicit oil and gas for Tehran, a sanction-busting scheme including a ship that docked off Houston that was being used to help, at least they believe it was, transport illicit Iranian oil. This is the next step in the pressure campaign on Iran. It does look like the talks are not going anywhere right now. And so, in just a moment, I'm going to explain what is happening and what is likely to happen here in the next 2 weeks. But in northern Africa, in Nigeria, a truck rammed into an Easter procession, killing 5. There has been a slaughter of Christians in Nigeria over recent weeks. So if you are praying, please put Nigerian Christians on your list. But this is one more example of the so-called religion of peace not bringing peace, but attacking Christians and killing them. Now, the United States came out, again, understand, so Japan just released top secret technology with its railgun. Now the United States came out, and a top secret U.S. spy drone is getting a deadly laser that melts missiles midair amid fears of World War III, according to Daily Mail. Why would the United States put that out? Because it's revealing some of its technology, again, to try to deter any war in the Middle East or any retaliation maybe by Iran or preemptive strike by Iran. Trump is expected to meet with the Qatari Prime Minister today. Terror state of Qatar was one of the first to blame Israel for October 7th. And so it's interesting that he's meeting today. It seems like some sort of deal is going to be struck. General Kurilla is supposed to be in Israel as well this week. So a lot of things are happening, but this is probably the biggest indicator that I've seen. On Easter Sunday, a total of 8 C-17A Globemaster 3s with the U.S. Air Force were tracked flying between Ramstein Air Base in Germany and Nevatim Air Base in southern Israel, all of which were linked to the transfer of air defense systems and originated from either Fort Bliss or Fort Cavazos, Texas. So since April 10th, 25 C-17s have landed at Nevatim in Israel, with most attached to the same air defense mission. Let me put this again in plain English. That is a massive amount of equipment coming into Israel, which means, just from an objective analysis, that the Israelis are preparing, and the United States is preparing, massive air defense against any Iranian retaliation for a strike from the U.S. and probably also Israel happening in the very near term, like in the next 2 weeks, maybe 3. And according to open source intel, Israel is now preparing for a possible strike on Iran, with Tel Aviv bracing for a response. If U.S.-Iran talks fail, we'll have to address the threats Iran poses. And now Israel's coming out as of today and saying what the objective analysis is revealing. They're preparing to strike Iran, and they're preparing for retaliation. So, on a different note completely, one of the most wild pieces of video I have seen in a while. This gal is out on her bodyboard there. Look at this. And a shark tips her off, and she lands on the shark and like is hugging it for a little bit. She survived. Probably won't swim there ever again, but she survived. Look at this. Right on top of it. She literally jumped a shark. You never thought that has ever happened in human history? Well, it has, and you saw it here on Patriot Radio. Thank you, Open Source Intel. That brings us now to the Russia front. Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a law ratifying the Strategic Partnership Treaty with Iran. That's interesting timing. Could Russia be signaling that it's going to come to Iran's defense if the United States or Israel attacks it? The treaty, which pledges closer cooperation in trade, defense, energy, and regional infrastructure, was initially inked by both Putin and Iranian President, that guy, President P, during a summit in Moscow back in January. Here's the bottom line with it. They are preparing, Russia is preparing now with its own axis. This indicates to me that there is a very high likelihood, not just of the strikes, but of a potential spark for World War III. And I'm going to get to why I think that here in a second. Financial Times is reporting that Putin is ready to freeze the front where it stands and give up the parts of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporozhye regions held by Ukrainian troops in exchange for the USA recognizing Crimea as Russian in a peace deal and banning Ukraine from joining NATO. That is interesting. That sounds like the makings of an actual peace deal, number one. Number two, why would Putin be doing that right now? Why would he be freezing the front in Ukraine right now unless he thought there was going to be war potentially elsewhere? Ukrainian attack drones successfully struck Russia's 51st GRAU arsenal this afternoon with multiple explosions. This ammunition dump is northeast of Moscow, so the Ukrainians are continuing to degrade Russian ammunition stores. And Dutch military intelligence has warned that Russia is intensifying hybrid attacks against the Netherlands and Europe, including attempts to disrupt the 2024 EU elections through cyber attacks on political parties. I think they're meaning the upcoming elections as well. But regardless, the failed operation targeted critical infrastructure, likely as preparation for future sabotage. So they're saying that the Russian threat is increasing, not decreasing, even if the Ukraine war ends. So Russia still plays a part in disrupting Europe and any responses by Europe to a war in the Middle East. Or more importantly, regarding China. German arms manufacturer giant Rheinmetall, their new artillery plant has doubled initial production goals, producing 350 artillery shells per year, up from a forecasted 200,000. Why is this important? Because this is far more than was expected, which means that there is a significant European deterrence that could be developing here, particularly with Germany, Poland, well, and hopefully a couple other countries. But I'm holding my breath regarding France. That brings us now to the National Front. Sarah Adams reports, don't be naive. Terrorist criminal groups and other extremists have deliberately collected personal information, including home addresses and other identifying details of law enforcement, military, and intelligence officers. I'm going to add to that, and CEOs and Patriot leaders. We know this because of the ISIS kill list in 2015, the Blue Leaks 2020, the doxing of police officers during the George Floyd protests in 2020, China's state-sponsored targeting, which is ongoing, Antifa and anarchist networks, cartel activity, the Taliban targeting via biometric devices post-2021, and cyberstalking of officers in 2022. This is a legitimate and real threat, and that attacks will happen in America. That likelihood is increasing dramatically. Go get trained on a firearm and exercise your Second Amendment rights. That's what makes America different than every other country. It has just led these terrorists just kind of run roughshod. Now, I want to talk about this quickly because we have seen an uptick in anarchist, Antifa, and other elements casing churches over the last 4 months. And we have talked about that here on the show. But we just had an incident right here in Spokane, in downtown, again yesterday. So this is still here and it's ramping up. And they are targeting Patriot leaders, CEOs, law enforcement. They're targeting them not just at their places of work or business, but targeting them at their homes. That's the next ramp up. So have your head on a swivel. Also, this whole thing happening in Texas, we're going to have some experts on here in the next couple of weeks. Epic City exposed. They try to cover this up. These are Islamic cities being created in Texas all over. They said, it's not that big a deal. It's not that big a deal. Now you can see what their real plan is based on this video that broke here yesterday. What if rather than just 100 houses, maybe 1,000 plus, rather than just one magnificent complex, not just one subdivision, an entire city purpose-built from top to bottom and infrastructure, an entire massive plot of land right here in Dallas. This is going to be the opportunity of a game changer. Epic 1 to Epic 2.0. This is no conspiracy. This is their stated plan to expand Epic City into a religious-centered enclave. Yeah, that's what their point is. Remember, Islam is not a religion. Those are not my words. Those are theirs. Islam is a theopolitical construct. In fact, I've mentioned it on this show before. But what's happening? What's being ramped up right now? Well, you're seeing this with Israel-hating demonstrator wearing a mock jihad suicide vest outside a pro-Hamas protest. Why would they start doing this if their intentions were peaceful? Which brings us to a very interesting event last night. And I wanted to bring this up. I'm going to extend the briefing just a little bit because this is so important. But last night, I received real-time confirmed intelligence that continuity of government staff is being flown to Mount Weather, Raven Rock, Greenbrier Hotel, and Camp David on the East Coast. This is real world. Real world call signs were also being used by TACAMOS, which is the nuclear war survivable airborne communications system for the United States. And that was off the west coast of Florida. Here's a map of those where those facilities are located on the East Coast. Now, again, this was not a training exercise. This was real world. This is a significant indicator that they are preparing for a potential nuclear strike. Why would that happen unless something was in the offing big in the Middle East? So what can you do on that piece? Well, this is what you can do. One way to prepare, make sure you have a single sideband radio so that you can receive news and information even if all the internet and everything else goes down. They're very cheap. TechSun probably has the best. There's a hand portable version, and there's also just kind of a desk portable version. Make sure you have some way to get information into your household. Also, Pam Bondi announced it's past time to end the anti-Christian weaponization of government started by the last administration. As per POTUS's executive order, the DOJ will hold the first task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias. Amen. Several cabinet members joined, including Bobby Kennedy. Just an amazing group of people, but it's the fact that they're actually talking about it is a huge step forward. Also, the CEO of U.S. taxpayer-funded GDI admitted to creating special exclusion hit list program that was used to strip ads from the Gateway Pundit and Breitbart and was captured on audio. So this thing saying that censorship was a conspiracy theory, well, that's now conspiracy fact. Also, Senator Ron Johnson is linking the World Trade Center Building 7 to the 9/11 cover-up and demands a new investigation into the attacks. And if you don't know what that is, Building 7 was not touched by anything and still yet imploded. Also, interestingly, some newscasts seem to show it gone already before it imploded. So, Ron Johnson is following a trail there that is not just very interesting, but is probably one of the most debated subjects of the last 25 years. So why now? Why should we do this? Because I think that we're going to continue to find, as we pull the thread of lying and cover-up that has been happening over the last 25 years, that the government really has not been protecting our interests. In fact, has been working against them in many different ways. So the more transparency, at least, the better. Which is why the announcement today by Marco Rubio that the U.S. State Department is going to cut positions and whole offices in a massive restructuring. Quote, the sprawling bureaucracy created a system more beholden to radical political ideology than advancing America's core national interests. One key will be eliminating a division in charge of civilian security, democracy, and human rights. Marco Rubio at least headed in the right direction there. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth confirmed for the first time this morning to Fox News that 3 senior staffers fired last week from the Pentagon, Dan Caldwell, Darren Selnick, and Colin Carroll, were fired from accusations for leaking classified information. When you dismiss people who you believe are leaking classified information, and again, the investigation is ongoing, will take time, and when the evidence is produced, it will go to DOJ, why would it surprise anyone if the very same people keep leaking? Once a leaker, always a leaker, often a leaker. And Hegseth did open the door, at least, that if some of those people were exonerated, that might be a possibility as part of the investigation. I suspect that they have information that that's not the case. DoD rapid response, we call it the Trump bump. The reality is when warfighting and lethality is brought back, and doing it seriously after and getting after soldiering and warfighting, people want to come back and sign up. There has been a huge increase in recruitment in the U.S. military, which is about time. And also the standards are being tightened for physical fitness, also about time. Now, interestingly enough, the White House posted this, the whitehouse.gov. The proximal origin, I'm quoting this now from the White House. Now, I want you to remember back in February 2020 on Patriot Radio, we called this as a lab leak that was very likely manufactured as part of a bioweapons program, or at least gain of function. We talked about it way back then. Everybody said we were crazy. There's no way that's possible. You're a conspiracy theorist. Now, will those same people come on and say, we were wrong, you were right? Probably not. But the fact of the matter is, you can be solid in understanding that Patriot Radio has the best information first before everybody else. So here's what the White House put out today. The proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2, which was used repeatedly by public health officials and the media to discredit the lab leak theory, was prompted by Dr. Fauci to push the narrative that COVID-19 originated naturally. Number one, the virus possesses a biological characteristic that is not found in nature. In other words, it was manufactured. Number two, data shows that all COVID-19 cases stem from a single introduction into humans. This runs contrary to previous pandemics where there were multiple spillover events. Number three, Wuhan is home to China's foremost SARS research lab, which has a history of conducting gain-of-function research. Number four, Wuhan Institute of Virology researchers were sick with COVID-like symptoms in the fall of 2019. So 2019 fall, February, March 2020, months before COVID-19 was discovered at the wet market. And number five, by nearly all measures of science, if there was evidence of a natural origin, it would have already surfaced, but it hasn't. United States government coming out unequivocally that the origin of COVID was a lab leak and that this was a manufactured virus. Now, they're going to try to argue that probably, maybe split hairs on it. But for me, what this does is this raises a whole bunch of questions that we need to look into. And also, we need to take seriously how we respond to these things in the future, that we don't use our own money here in the United States to fund the bioweapons programs of our enemies. And last but not least, the United States Marine Corps has formed a small FPV unit, which is a Marine Corps attack drone team. And so there's some restructuring going on to face drone warfare in the future. Now, when we come back from the break, Don Jolly, we're going to talk more about how we should handle these kind of things in the future, but also what might be in store for the United States in the next 6 months.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
What do a neurosurgeon, a country artist, and a television and radio host have in common? They all saw the writing on the wall. Big banks sharing your financial information with big government. Join them as owners in Old Glory Bank, the pro-America online bank that protects your privacy, security, and liberty. Invest today at own.oldglorybank.com.
And we're back with our guest today, Don Jolly, president and co-founder of We the Patriots USA Incorporated, a 9/11 Navy veteran, former Pfizer executive who spent over 2 decades fighting for health freedom after she and her son both suffered vaccine injuries. And she has a background in health coaching, cybersecurity, and insider pharmaceutical industry knowledge. She also co-founded the organization on July 4th, 2020, alongside Brian Festa. And if you want to visit it, it's wethepatriotsusa.org. Don, it is great to have you on the show today. You speak my language all over your website. If you're standing up to tyrants, we're going to stand up for you. I love that. So, Don, tell us a little bit about kind of what got you started, and then I'd like to get into some of the specific issues that we're facing today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. So I got started because I joined the United States Navy when I was 17 and a half. And I was injured by vaccines, but I didn't know it at the time. I didn't realize why I'd gotten so sick out of nowhere, because I was in boot camp, got all my shots, and then they conveniently lost my medical record. So I had to get all of my shots again. And that was during 9/11. I noticed you were just talking about 9/11 before, but anyway, it was during 9/11. So anthrax was a big deal. And that meant 6 doses of squalene were injected into my body, which caused numerous autoimmune conditions. And then when I had my son, he was born in a naval facility, and I had done enough research to know I didn't want him to be vaccinated. And they took him while I was sleeping and gave him hepatitis B and vitamin K. And they did a handful of other things to him unrelated to vaccines that were against my religious beliefs. And it wasn't a good day. And that anger that I had, that righteous anger, still fuels my passion today to fight for other people's children, to, do my best to make sure that other parents don't have to live through what I lived through, because my son was very sick for a long time.
So it was interesting back in 2018. So I had gone through, I think I had like 48 vaccinations through my whole military career. I saw this happen to many of my soldiers. They lose their medical records or specifically lose their vaccination records, and then they would be, we're just going to just do it again. No worries. But what really struck me, what started me down this road is my driver, 19 years old, pericarditis, immediately after anthrax vaccine. The dude is out for weeks, totally healthy guy. And I'm like, there's something wrong here. And I wanted to start looking into that. So in 2018, when I was in the Washington State Legislature, I worked with Bobby Kennedy. He actually came to Washington State, and we were trying to stop the mandatory vaccinations just in the school system, because we were seeing parents being forced to choose, make kind of horrible choices. And I'd like you to talk just a little bit about that, but I'd also like you to comment. I know these are 2 huge questions, but I'd also like you to comment on the anthrax vaccine, because I know there's a lot of veterans listening to Patriot Radio today that want to know kind of what should they be looking for as maybe a side effect or maybe something that they need to have treated.
Yeah. So, the school vaccine thing is a big deal. And that's something that we here at We the Patriots USA have been very involved in. I actually left the state of New York because we lost the right to opt our children out for religious reasons. We didn't even have philosophical reasons. I was involved in that fight with SB 277 many years ago in California. We lived through that in Connecticut. We actually had a case before the United States Supreme Court that they unfortunately did not elect to take up, which could have brought back exemptions in every state that has lost them at this point, which would have been a spectacular win, which is precisely why the Supreme Court didn't take it up. And we have vowed to fight any state who is willing to trample on our rights. So Massachusetts and Hawaii are two that we're paying very close attention to right now. It's just ridiculous that states think that they have the right to raise our children, right? And that they have the right to intervene. And something, I'll address the questions you already raised, but something I really wanted to talk about today was medical kidnapping. And I'd love to get into that in a few moments, because it's around the same veins, right? Where the state thinks they know better than the parent. And there are very few instances that actually is accurate. There's a time and a place for that, right? But it's very limited, very limited. Government should always be very limited. And the government's on steroids, essentially, at this point in time. And it's absolutely disgusting what they're doing. And we stand here ready to fight against that.
So let's talk about the first thing, and that is, what should veterans be looking for right now, especially regarding the anthrax vaccine? Let's just start with that.
Sure. Well, the first thing I'd recommend right off the bat that anyone does with any vaccine is to detox as best as possible, because, with COVID, it can be argued. I've heard some medical professionals say it can't really be detoxed out. Others argue it can. It's worth a shot regardless. But with all other vaccines, you can certainly detox. And I would always recommend that. As far as the side effects go, they always say, it's just localized. You're just going to have some redness. You're just going to have some swelling, maybe some tenderness, things like that. You may be tired. What I tend to notice from most people, and what I suffered myself, extreme muscle aches, extreme fatigue, extreme headaches, fever, stiffness, joint pain, things like that. You can, of course, go into anaphylactic shock. That's one of the worst case scenarios, other than death, obviously. But a lot of people suffer from neurological symptoms. And they don't usually realize it's related to that, right? Like, being in the military is stressful. A lot of us have PTSD and all sorts of other, issues that go along with that. It's hard to narrow it down sometimes. So you may not know that that's what's happening in your body. But look, my personal belief is there's no vaccine that's safe for any human being. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not giving medical advice, but that's my unsolicited, unprofessional opinion. I don't believe that there is such a thing, or that there even can be such a thing as a safe vaccine because of the adjuvant in it. So I again, would recommend detoxing no matter what vaccine you've had, no matter how long ago it was. It's not going to hurt to detox from these things as long as you're doing so in a safe manner.
So when we come back from the break, I want to talk about this medical kidnapping situation. And I really started to see this with just mandatory vaccines. We saw this before COVID. I mean, this is 2 years before COVID. Mandatory vaccines, all these mandates and everything. It really was kind of setting the stage for this medical kidnapping. When we come back from the break, Don Jolly.
American business owners, you understand the power of TV. If you have a product that you want to sell to millions of like-minded Americans who value quality, hard work, and supporting the red, white, and blue, Supporting Patriots is the perfect place. If you're ready to bring your product to a patriotic audience eager to buy American, then contact us today at supportingpatriots.com and secure your spot on Supporting Patriots. Let's build a stronger economy. When we buy American, we support our future.
I couldn't give anything a higher endorsement.
I would be remiss had I not include Cardio Miracle on my very short list of secrets.
It's the real deal. It's a real product. It's not another supplement.
I'm operating about 6 to 8 hours, and I've noticed that being on this Cardio Miracle has made a huge difference.
Since I started taking Cardio Miracle, about 8 months into it, the benefits have been fantastic.
If I get hungry, then I just have a Cardio Miracle.
Not only is it safe, but it's necessary to take Cardio Miracle to stay well.
This let me sleep. It's showing up more energy, more get up and go, and it's all because of what this company does.
For me as a doctor, Cardio Miracle is a staple.
Cardio Miracle to me is hope in a glass.
To try Cardio Miracle for yourself and get a special fan discount, go to the host page right now and click the link for Cardio Miracle.
And we're back with Don Jolly. She's the president and co-founder of We the Patriots USA, wethepatriotsusa.org. On medical kidnapping, some people say, you're just blowing it out of proportion, and yet it's happening here in the United States.
Sure is. I wish I was blowing it out of proportion. I would love to never have a case like this. You may remember in 2023, we had a case in Missouri, and the Guidrys had their 4 children medically kidnapped by the state because they were using an alternative medical treatment with one of their children who was autistic. And he was having great success, and he was, I believe, being cured from his autism. And not only did they take that child away, they took away their other 3 children as well. And usually in these cases, it can take months, it can take years to get these kids back. And we got them back in a record 6 weeks, which was a major blessing. But I mean, this is happening all the time. We're getting contacted all the time. Even in red states, we've gotten calls here in Idaho, where we're based, Florida, Texas. There was a case just within the last 2 weeks out in Massachusetts. We actually saved a baby in Connecticut just a few months ago. The state was looking at capturing them because their mother decided not to get the routine vaccines, and she wasn't complying with the vaccine schedule. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And it's not only for vaccines either. I just want to be clear to that. Like I said, the first case that I mentioned, that was for using an alternative treatment. But we've actually had cases even with parents who are choosing to breastfeed and not formula feed. And the doctor said, well, the child's not gaining weight quickly enough. So we're going to intervene because we know it's better for your child, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me. And, unfortunately, this is happening during the Trump administration, even with Bobby Kennedy at the head of it, it's still happening. These men can't stop everything from happening.
That's right.
And that's why we need organizations to stand up. We need parents to be aware of these issues. We need amazing people like you to let people know that this is happening. And I also want to define even what medical kidnapping is, right? Because we get a lot of people who contact us in child custody disputes, and we don't take on those cases, although that does unfortunately happen in many cases. Parents may be going through a divorce or a separation, and one wants to vaccinate and the other one doesn't, or one wants to try chemo on the child and the other one wants to go natural. These things happen all the time. But when we say medical kidnapping, Brian and I, it's an instance where a child is forcefully being removed from his or her parent's custody. And it's almost always because the parent is choosing the natural route for raising their child rather than going, the medical guidelines and the mainstream medical guidelines.
So what are some buzzwords that parents can watch out for? Like when they start hearing these things, they should be like, something's going on.
Failure to thrive is a big one. Doctors love to use that. Even well-meaning pediatricians that are quote unquote on our side will sometimes use that language because the insurance companies will then cover those visits. I would recommend a parent pay out of pocket for those visits. I would much rather pay out of pocket, be out a few $100s than put my children at risk and put my family at risk of having DCF or CPS knocking on my door. Failure to thrive is often cited, or going against medical advice is often cited. Quite frankly, just having your child in a hospital, that's a big one right there, because if you decide to do anything that's considered outside the box, especially not getting hepatitis B or vitamin K, which is not at all a vitamin and it has a black box warning, those automatically flag you automatically. So anytime you go against what a doctor deems necessary or routine, you're going to be flagged. Now, hopefully they don't take that kind of action. If they do, contact us immediately, info@wethepatriotsusa.org. And there are other people out there that are trying to help, but unfortunately we don't hear of too many law firms that are taking on these kind of cases. We actually wish we knew of more that we could send people their way. But those are the two biggest things I would be the most concerned with when you're getting ready to give birth and you're going into a hospital setting rather than having a home birth or going to a birthing center, if at all possible. You just need to be aware, both parents, if both parents are involved, or any other advocates that may be in attendance, need to be aware of the processes. I always recommend one parent or one guardian is always present with the baby at all times to make sure they don't go against anything that you have requested. And I would put everything in writing. And if you can get a doctor or nurses to sign off on it, even better.
So quick, vitamin K, because a lot of people are like, well, hey, K2 and D3, don't they go together?
Yes,
Explain that
that's
real
exactly
quick. Yeah.
Vitamin K is fantastic when it's a vitamin and it's being administered through the mother's breast milk. But again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not giving medical advice, but you don't want to get it. The side effects from it are terrible. Most babies, in my opinion, suffer from that. A lot of people say jaundice is a result. That can be argued, right? I've heard arguments on both sides for that, but I've heard of cancer being caused from vitamin K. It opens up your blood-brain barrier, which allows all the ingredients in the vaccine to go right into the baby's bloodstream. I mean, it's not something you ever want to just do without research, right? Any medical intervention should always be well researched and not only spoken to your doctor about, but you should do your own research and present that information to your doctor if that's the route that you're even considering.
Informed consent. I mean, isn't that the basis of all medical intervention? I mean, shouldn't it be? I mean, it is in the law. I mean, when I first was coming up in law school, I knew that that's what was the basis for it, but it seems like that's gone away today. So I think you bring up a fantastic point. In the last 30 seconds we have, any closing thoughts for the Patriot Radio audience? And again, where can they go if they get a doctor that seems to be coming against them?
Sure. So www.wethepatriotsusa.org. That's our website. You can get us there. Our reach on social media is very small. I have been personally banned from all social media sites, so you can't find me online. And our social media is quite shadow banned. So go to our website, join our mailing list. We do email people. We don't bombard you with emails, but we do keep people apprised of what's going on. But if you ever feel as though your rights are being stepped on, whether it is from a medical reason, if it's First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, if it's anything about parental rights or the Constitution, we are here to serve you.
That's right.
And we are servant leaders, and we are here to do whatever God calls us to do. So
Don Jolly, thank you for joining me. We're going to have you back on again. It was a little short today, but thank you. God bless you. And for everybody out there in Patriot Radio land, this is Matt Shea. Thank you for joining us today. Keep up the fight.
Thank you, Matt.